I'd just like to start and say welcome to everyone to this special edition of Why I Became an Astrologer. We are having a panel discussion and we're introducing some of the graduates from the International Academy of Astrology, AstroCollege, and their journeys in becoming astrologers themselves and how it's impacted their lives, because as people may know, everyone who does astrology usually does it for their own personal reasons in some way, and then it often fits into other sorts of areas of life that we use. I'll introduce everyone, and we do have a special guest as well, which is Alex Trenoweth, all the way from London. And poor old Alex at the moment, I mean, here I am in Australia, Luke Bailey, as you can see by my name on there. I'm also the CEO of AstroCollege and took it over about going on 2 years ago nearly now. And at the same time, we have Susan Gidel, who is a well-renowned financial astrologer, who started studying and finished her studies at the IA in 2014. Is that correct, Susan?
Yeah,
I think.
that's
Yeah.
right.
And up in the left-hand corner, we have Linda Furiate. Is that how I pronounce it?
Very good. Thank you.
Very good.
Yep.
I'm glad I got it right.
You got it right.
And Linda is a motivational speaker amongst other things, but I'll get her to explain to you how she uses her astrology. We also have Barbie Heffernan, as you can see. She's actually one of our instructors. So poor old Barbie came to study at the IAA and then never left. So she's still here. So when did you do your studies, Barbie? What year was that you finished?
Well, I finished in 2023.
2023. So here we go. So we wouldn't let her go. So she finished in 2023 and she stayed on, and she's one of our valuable instructors. So, but also, you're also an iridologist, and she's even an equine iridologist and a number of other things as well. And then we have Alex Trenoweth, who is our guest astrologer today, our sort of person that we said was going to be a surprise guest, coming to us from London. Although you were actually sort of originally grown up in another country, I'm sure. Is that correct?
I'm from Motown, not from Detroit.
There you go, from Detroit. Okay. Was it Rock City, as they say, wasn't it? Detroit.
It is.
Yeah.
Home of rock and roll.
Home of rock and roll. That's the one. So Alex has joined us, and she's just advised us that she's just finished another book, and it's just gone off to the publisher. So I'll get her to explain how she fits into it as well. But look, I'd just like to start, and everyone has to just excuse I might have a little bit of a cough going on here. Well, it's actually just a tickle in the throat. I don't know what it is. But I do have some water in case I need it. And for those who might be wondering what that funny little thing is in the back corner of my screen, that's actually a totem pole that was built for me by a friend of mine, which has a lot of spiritual significance. And on the other side, because, I still haven't got around to putting all of the pictures up in this room, is a, so I think it's copper. It's a copper astrology chart. So it's actually, just something I've got sitting behind me. But I love everyone else's setup at the moment as well. All right, so let's get into it. So for me, the getting into astrology was something I did from a very early age. And realistically, I started at 16 because I didn't believe it worked. I met a friend of mine who has just had a birthday just the other day, Rob, and he's now a professor at Newcastle University here in Australia, and I think he's the dean of the school. And he was at 16 at the time, and I went over to his place because he's also a martial artist. And we were at the time just doing a bit of practice with martial arts, and he introduces me to an astrology chart, and I went, what's that? And I think I've still got that hand-drawn astrology chart in one of my filing cabinets in another room. And he was saying, that's my astrology chart, not knowing that he'd actually learnt that from his mum. And his mum, obviously, she was there, Colleen, she's a lovely lady. And she'd been taught, what I found out years later, she'd been taught astrology from a gentleman who had been taught by someone who my dad had done astrology with. And I didn't know that. So it was very interesting that I had sort of a family thing. Although I was 16 at the time, my father passed away when I just turned 17. So I really do believe that he's really been influencing my astrology journey more from the other side of the veil, more so than being on this side. And so how I got into astrology was, look, this is a load of rubbish. And I got a photocopy out of a blank chart and a photocopy out of the ephemeris of the planets, a photocopy of the table of houses where it was going to look up, and a book on, here, knock yourself out and do it. And that's how I learned astrology. I had no instruction, no teaching, no nothing. And it wasn't until about 4 years later that I discovered the Chiron School of Astrology in Sydney by accident, because back then in the 80s, you did not have internet. It was basically a small ad in a local newspaper when I landed back in Sydney from moving around the place. And I ended up going up to a open day for their college for the classes, and then decided that's what I wanted to do. And so astrology became a big part of my life. And during that year, I started teaching a basic astrology course with Chris Turner, because I sort of knew where I was at. I'd studied a lot, believe it or not. You know, I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of charts I put together as a crazy 16-year-old. And I found out years later, well, not years later, but during that process, that when I got my interest in astrology, I had a transiting Jupiter-Uranus conjunction sitting right on my ascendant in Sagittarius. And I had to laugh. I went, well, if that wasn't someone pushing me through a pinhole, I don't know what was. So for those who understand some astrology will understand that they're the two planets that basically have a rulership over astrology and astrological studies. And they were sitting right on my ascendant in Sagittarius at the time. So there was all this evidence that proved to me that astrology had an influence on life. And so I took that with me, and I worked in multiple different careers. From a money point of view, I worked in a telecommunications area. I've always worked in technology primarily, and I worked in everything from, product management through to sales management through to you name it. And along the way, what I found was that the astrology helped me understand clients. It helped me understand the days that I needed to do things, when they were going to be more beneficial, when they weren't going to be beneficial. And I literally got to the point where I would test this. And over many, many years of working in, say, a sales environment, I found that certain days worked for me and certain days didn't. I even came down to the point where I used it with a numerology sense, and there's a lot of other stuff around that. But I found that certain days would always result in anything that I took as an order or an appointment I had that was a 2-day always worked really well with me. Anything that I had on a 4-day didn't work well with me, or it had problems down the track. And I got to the point where I would literally say to the administration staff who was making my quotes up, no, I don't want it dated on that date. I want it dated this date. And I would literally hand it out to people on those days, knowing I was going to get my better results. And it worked. But that came after about 6 or 7 years of experience. So these are the sorts of things that I've taken with me. And I've always been involved in either teaching astrology or doing consultations with people. It has been partly for me a sideline job, but it's come back around to being where I'm focusing all my efforts now. And that is literally in the rebuilding and the rebranding of the school, and to bring that to, I would call it the next generation, and just modernize it in such a way that how we learn astrology can be shared in different ways. And I'm really excited about that. It's just, it's been a big, massive task. And Alex will tell you all about it. When you're going through a second Saturn return, you understand what's going on. So that's sort of, it makes you work harder. So that's sort of my journey. But what I wanted to do was now introduce, I think we'll start off with Susan Gidel, because part of what we did with this particular, why I became an astrologer, I also wanted to focus a little bit on that financial astrology side, because I was normally just why I became a Jyotish astrologer, why I became a vibrational. Barbie, you're coming back for that. Why I became a horary astrologer. We've got coming up with Elena Lumen and Reuven. And Reuven was one of Elena's students. So that's why it's a great option to have. And he's actually a pharmacist based out of the Philippines. So it'll be interesting to hear their stories. But Susan, because you're so busy, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, and we know that that's happened a lot. There's been a lot of people with interest in how to invest, where to start, what to do. I thought I'd start with you and, get into a little bit of the background because, you've only, I say it like this, and I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way, but you've only been, finished your studies for now 12 years of your life. So you've obviously had, things you've done in the past and how it came to becoming an astrologer. That's what I want to hear your story. So I'm going to shut up now and let you take the floor.
Okay. Well, thank you. And like we were talking before you all joined us, this has been a second Saturn return for me. I started life as a journalist and in the commodity futures industry, and I spent my day job career in the financial services business for, I don't know, since the late 70s. And so I knew a lot about the markets. I had interviewed people who had used astrology to trade, and so I knew that was a thing. I was kind of always interested in astrology, just from my family. My sister, my dad, and I are all born within 1 week of each other. We're all trine to my mother's sun in Taurus. So, that was just kind of cool to me. And when I was a journalist, I was early on in what I consider now to be the GAN revival that started in the late 70s, early 80s. And I became like the GAN expert at the magazine and went to conferences and stuff and learned a lot about GAN trading. And it fascinates me. GAN is notorious about not saying he was an astrologer. And certainly any of the meetings I went to or anybody who was using GAN at the time never mentioned the word. But now I understand why it's clear that he was. But anyway, I thought that was really cool. I liked learning about GAN. I liked the weird Elliott wave stuff. And so that I like financial astrology doesn't surprise me in the least. Throw it all into the weird category in terms of how to look at markets. But how I really became interested in astrology was I was self-employed at the time, and a friend of mine and I were both kind of just interested in astrology, sun sign astrology, that sort of thing. And we were going to launch our first website. And this was really early, and it was in 1995. And I happened to see an article in Chicago Magazine about someone who picked launch dates for companies. And I said, "Oh, Cindy, we've got to go. I'll go see her, and she'll pick a great date for us." And that was Barbara Shermer, if any of you knew her.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did pick a good date for our website launch. And then I saw her regularly for the next 20 years. And, once a year, twice a year, quarterly, monthly at the end. And she's the one who really pushed me. Similar story, Luke. She said, "You've got Sag rising and Pluto's conjuncting your ascendant. If there's anything that you really want to study, maybe now would be a good time to do that." And so as it happened, there was an ESAR conference in the suburbs. And so I took a week off of work. I went, didn't know anybody or anything. I didn't get any of the jokes. They all, I didn't know enough to bring a chart. But my mind was just completely refreshed, even though it was so intense. And I thought, this is great. I've got to know more about this. And I remember I did go to one of the conference and say, can you run my chart for me? I didn't bring one, and everybody keeps talking in these sessions, look at your chart and do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know. And so they were nice, and they ran my chart and looked at it and said, "This conference is going to change your life." because Pluto was within just minutes of conjunct my ascendant. And I just nodded and went, yeah, whatever. And
As people do. Yeah.
yeah. And then fast forward another probably 4 years, and I went to another ESAR conference in the suburbs. And I almost skipped it, but I went to hear, is it Giselle Terry? Is that how you pronounce her name?
Yeah.
Giselle, who was president of ESAR at the time. And she was talking early morning one day about how she incorporates astrology into her practice as a psychotherapist. And a light bulb went off. I said, and I thought to myself, what? You don't have to quit your day job and be an astrologer? I had no clue. I had no clue that people did that. I thought you either were or you weren't. But of course, I have 8 planets in fixed signs. So that was like, oh my God, I didn't know I could do that. And so that's when I sought out IAA. And by that time, at the very least, thank God it was online. Because, I mean, I was in Chicago. I could have found somebody probably to take lessons from. But I was kind of strapped for time. I was still working full-time downtown. And so to have the online classes was a godsend. And so I just started. And, you know, I'm a Capricorn. And so, of course, I had to take formal classes.
The funniest thing
And
is,
so-
Susan, you're a Capricorn with Sag rising. That's exactly the same as me, funnily enough.
Yeah. So I just did one at a time until I got done. And always with the intention of applying it to the financial markets or the financial perspective of some sort.
Yeah. And how did you find doing that? just on a general note, because when we teach, I know the curriculum pretty well. It's not going to teach you specifically financial astrology, and you've actually jumped in, and we've had conversations saying that, can I start doing a course and we'll teach people how to do the financial astrology side? And we're looking to sort of do that in late September of this year, and putting the planning in now, because you've described to me that you need more financial astrologers right now because you're overwhelmed a bit. So
I am a little overwhelmed a bit, and not necessarily about the market side of it, but I think there's just, and maybe you all feel it too from the queries that you get from clients. There's just seems to be a normalization of astrology around the world. That this is just, of course I use astrology in my life kind of thing going on. And that it applies to financial decisions or financial questions that one has isn't surprising when you have the overarching belief that astrology is just something normal that I use all the time. So I think from the course perspective that we're going to put together for the fall, I just want I want astrologers to understand and have more confidence in answering financial questions that come up with their clients. Because I think it's just a matter of tweaking kind of what you already know.
Yeah. So and your background, Susan, you said you worked as a journalist. And when did you decide? When did you decide? Okay, I'm gonna do the astrology. What made you decide to do it? I mean, I know you sort of touched on it.
When my company went bankrupt and I was out of a job in my late 50s.
Okay.
I thought, well, I was almost done with my studies, maybe halfway done, and it came actually at a good time. I had time then to study more, to apply it more, and to kind of do more research into the financial arena. Okay. So it was really a blessing in disguise. I had the time to really focus on learning the craft and applying it into what I was interested in.
Do you find you
But
use it?
it was, I lost my job. I had no other choice.
Fair enough. That's usually a good reason. And sometimes life throws us those curveballs. I'm interested to know that how that when it was Pluto sitting on your ascendant, that you decided to walk into an astrology conference, and then you've got all these astrologers going, "Hey, your life's about to change," and you get, "Really?"
Yeah, no, I did. I remember it clearly.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Okay, fine.
And here you are, 12 years later down the track, or a bit more paper probably, because you had to do the study in the meantime. But that's but the funniest thing is, you talk about Pluto on your ascendant. Part of the what I'm trying to make all these changes with the college is it's really, I'm targeting those Pluto in Sagittarius generation. I just think they are the ones that you when you said to me just now, I said to all of us, there's this bit more of an acceptance of astrology across the globe. Oh yeah, I use it all the time. When I was growing up or doing astrology, there was a real issue with that. Some people were like, I felt like I was a bit like an evangelist of astrology, and I was being, called all these other names, and I didn't, oh, that's all garbage and this, that, and everything else. And I go, well, prove it, test it, So that's, so I spent a lot of my life testing how and why it works. And I'm absolutely convinced that planets have a physical effect on us. But my other question before I move on maybe to Linda to start, and when we can open up discussions when everyone's had their bit of a say, is do you use it just for timing of things for yourself as well? Like, when you're going to send out important emails, or when you're going to...
all the time.
There you go. See, so it becomes part of your day-to-day, and it does give you it does give you an edge. I don't
send important emails without checking the rising sign and where the moon is, and Actually, a long time ago, I did a little study for a friend of mine. We did an A/B test on a email blast against their what's the word for it? Well, whatever their standard email, best performing email headline.
Yeah.
And I said, let's try writing the headline so it matches the sign of the moon when it goes out. And it increased the performance on the email by X%. And they did that. And so I know that that's a thing. I don't go to that degree very often, but I do always pick a good time to send an email. And I've learned that I don't write well when the moon is void. And so I just block my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take clients when the moon is void. I block my calendar.
Yep. Well, see, these are the things that you've learned along the way. One of the things, I don't know if everyone realized, but when we started this this particular podcast or get together, the moon had just come out of void of course in Scorpio, and it was at 0 degrees, about 20 minutes of Sag. So I didn't want to start this until it had moved a little bit into Sagittarius first and got out of void of course. So giving you that's exactly part of the timing. The other thing I was going to say, and now I've just forgotten what it was because there was something else I was going to say about that. I'll come back to it. I've just forgotten.
Okay.
So, all right, Linda. So, Linda, would you like to just give a bit of an introduction about yourself, what you've done, what you do? Because although I've reached out to you and I can see bits and pieces online, I really haven't had that conversation with you yet.
No, we really haven't had an opportunity to speak. So
No.
I'm Linda Furiate. I live right outside of Washington, D.C. Lived here for quite a while. And just, the beginning of my journey with astrology has been, it started at my first Saturn return. I was in a little metaphysical bookstore in Cleveland, Ohio. I was with some friends, and they were having astrology readings, and I just tagged along with them because we were going to do lunch or whatever. And they're like, they did their readings, and then they're like, do you want to do one? I'm like, I don't know, whatever. Well, we'll pay for it. Okay, I'll do it, kind of thing. So I did the reading, and I thought it was really cool. And, the guy was like really spot on about what I had been going through, at that time in my life during my first Saturn return. So I thought it was really cool. So I bought a book. I think it was called Astrology for the Millions or something like that. I know we probably all know that book. So I got home, started reading it, and then I started putting charts together by hand and trying to figure out the degree of the moon and the rising signs and all this other stuff because I have a moon in Virgo, so I analyze everything. I got to figure it out. So I just started learning astrology from that book, and I was just fascinated by it. And then a couple of years later, I'm like, I'm going to have another reading. I thought that was really cool. Was going through some more stuff. I wanted some insight from somebody else. So after I had that reading, I'm like, I need to figure out how this guy really did this, because he told me some stuff, they were spot on, and other things was like, I don't know, where are you getting that info from? So I wanted to figure out how to get it, by looking at this wheel, this little round circle with all these little glyphs on it. So I started taking some classes and just, at another little local metaphysical bookstore here in town. So, and I thought that was kind of cool. But then it was later that year when I was taking those classes, I got into a car accident. And as a result of that car accident, I developed a really, really rare neurological disorder. My body became so twisted. I couldn't sit up in a chair. I couldn't eat. I had to stop working. I kind of just self-isolated. And I went through almost a year process of trying to get a diagnosis for what was wrong with me. And it was devastating. Imagine this is what my body was going through before I was diagnosed, and to this day still on some level. But imagine someone grabs you by the hair and they're pulling you backwards and pulling you backwards, and they're twisting your head so far back, and you have absolutely no control over your being. I was living like that for a really long time. So when I was going through these astrology, learning astrology, what I really, really got involved more because one of the other students in my class, he and I kind of teamed up, and he was really intrigued as well. But we wanted to find out in my chart why I was going through this. What was going on in my chart? What was going on in my world that would make my body do this? Or, I would have to experience this in my life. And I started to find answers. So it became this journey of self-discovery of why I went through or why I was going through what I was going through that allowed me to figure out a treatment plan, figure out a path. And it really set me on my path to become a motivational person and to start working with other people who have, the name of the condition is called cervical dystonia, and to start working with other people who have dystonia. I'm an advocate now for people all over the world who have dystonia. I'm a support group leader. I've written lots of articles. I've been on TV. I've done all this stuff. So that put me on this path of helping others. And the reason why, astrology is so important to me is because it helps us figure out who we are and, what is at the core of our being. So around, I don't know, I think in the early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s, early 2000s, I really wanted to get a format of A to Z on what I learned because I knew a lot of stuff, but I didn't have a format. So I started looking into, I was taking some local workshops and stuff with the NCGR locally, and then somehow I heard about OCA, which was the beginning of IAA, now AstroCollege. So I really was looking at their curriculum for a couple of years. And then finally I got the courage to call Ina Stanley one day, or I just called the school, I should say. And then Ina Stanley called me back. And we had this 2-hour long conversation. And I was hooked. So I started, like a couple of weeks later, I started going to IAA, graduated there in 2012. I think, the biggest graduating class ever. I think there was like 12 or 15 of us or something in that class. I don't know if there's a lot of people graduating that year. So it's pretty phenomenal. But what astrology has done for me is over time, I say I'm a professional astrologer. And someone once asked me, well, what makes you professional? And I had to think about that. And I'm like, you know what? That's a good question. I said, what makes me professional? And I said this like smart alecky, but it's also true. But what makes me a professional is I'm good enough to charge money for it. And I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, she just kind of laughed, and that was kind of interesting. But what happens is when you learn astrology and you start to understand the depth and core of it, it becomes, it gets in your blood and becomes, just part of your being. So everything you do becomes astrological. You watch a movie, you take a walk, you meet a friend, you do all these things, and it just becomes your life. And I think, I know we want to talk about, becoming a professional astrologer, and we don't have to be professional 24/7. We don't have to be full-time astrologers to be a professional astrologer. But what I love about astrology and what's kept me going all these years is for one, it's in my blood, but it helps me understand me, and it helps me understand other people. And to me, that is priceless. So especially when I'm working with a lot of other people who have disabilities, who have dystonia. I work a lot with blind people. One of my specialties with astrology is addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So I can really get to the core of who that individual is and really help them. And that to me is priceless.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that's why I think astrology should be part of everyone's curriculum, whether they do it professionally or just personally, because it will help you understand yourself. It will help you understand your relationships. It will help you understand timing. It helps you understand if I'm having a bad day, why, or a bad life, or a bad year, or a bad whatever, why am I not like everybody else? Why can't I achieve whatever? And somebody else did it. All I have to do is look at my chart, and there's the answer, to that question. And it's to me, it's an amazing thing.
Can I add to that, Linda? What you just described is this is part of the reason why I talked about the Pluto and Sagittarius generation, and while we're trying to get prepared for as they become the next generation, literally leading this world forward. They've lost the Pluto in Sag. If you think about it, they're losing faith in the establishment in some ways. They're losing faith in religion. They're losing faith in governments. They're losing faith in a lot of things based on what we see, and they're a global access generation. So everything's happening. They can see everything that's going on in the world pretty quickly. One of the things that we keep forgetting is that, don't forget, the biggest astrology library in the world is in the Vatican.
Right.
So we're talking about the churches and the religions and universities of old days always were taught astrology. Astronomy wasn't astronomy without astrology. Astronomers were the apprentices to the astrologers that did all the calculations and all the charting. So a lot of the famous people, Hippocrates, everyone takes a Hippocratic oath when it comes to medicine, but they keep forgetting that he was an astrologer. Right. And that he had to, and his whole thing was that you have to be versed in, to be a physician, you have to be versed in astrology first and understand the person before you can heal them. And all of this knowledge has been either buried, sold off. There's a lot of different things you could say, or burned. And now what we're trying to do is bring that information back. And I think this next generation will be the ones that bring it back in a new form. And I think that's why you said, Susan, what's going on is we're getting more of astrology, I use it all the time. Whereas 30 years ago, most people would laugh at you. I mean, I remember, I'll tell you a funny little story quickly. I talk. You may have said I used to use this in my workplace. Now, when I worked in that one of the sales environments I worked in, I had this team of admin staff, and the team of admin staff, there was the accountant and the financial director, I should say, and about 7 or 8 admin girls, and they're all ladies. So they all had they knew I did astrology. Can we get a chart done? So I made them all go off and get their birth details. And I thought, I can't sit down and do a chart for them all. It's going to take me too much time. So I had, I've still got some astrology software programs, and I ran a chart for them each, and I gave them a report. But the most amazing thing in this admin team, didn't matter what their signs were, 7 out of 8 people all had Capricorn rising. Now, I don't care what Susan, you're just muted at the moment, but I don't care what anyone says. That's beyond chance level. Is it? I'm not saying everybody who works in administration in a firm all has Capricorn rising, but was it just a coincidence that these people could, 1, work together, 2, were compatible with each other to a degree, but all had the same focus? And those sorts of things were never surprised me. These were the things that, like you said, Linda, you can use it to understand people. I'll also say one other thing, and that is my ex-wife, and I say it like that in the nicest possible way, was of Greek background, but her parents grew up in villages in Greece. Now, we're not talking, they're not that old, we're talking about Vula, who is, born in the late 1940s. She said when she was at school as a kid, they would teach them about the astrology and the planets as part of their schooling. So we're not talking that long ago, but this was probably because the schooling within villages in somewhere like Greece was a little bit different to what they're starting to teach now, and they still held those old traditions. So it's about really bringing back all of that knowledge. And I think everyone sitting in this panel right now has had the fortunate and unfortunate situation where life has thrown us into the point of having to learn astrology, and then realizing and having those aha moments that go, oh, this actually works, and then finding our place on how to use it. So what I'm trying to do now is make it so that people can come along and find out where it fits for them. But you're right, Linda. Yep, I think everyone should have an element, even if they just did the basic astrology course and understood how a chart is, how to read it, what things mean. And then from there, they could sort of start to look at other components of it and help them, guide them in their lives. Anyway, I'll shut up and let you get back to it. Sorry.
No, and it's true, because I think that it's that whole concept of know thyself.
Yeah.
And the best way to know thyself is to, understand your astrology chart. And it's something that we should all know. And I really do believe that would be one thing that would add to peace on earth. If we knew who we were, we wouldn't go after, certain things. We wouldn't get angry over, stuff. We wouldn't do this, we wouldn't do that. And we would do some of the right things for us and for the world. And so, and we would maybe not be so jealous or so competitive or so this or that. But I do believe if you know who you are and you know where you're coming from. And what I like about IAA or AstroCollege is the way this curriculum is taught, where you go back to ancient times and into the future, and you learn everything in between. And it's a process of learning, and it's a process of structure, because you can get astrology knowledge from anywhere, but then how do you put it together, and how do you really apply that?
Yes.
And it's really nice to know that there's a stepping stone and there's a logic to it. Of course, there's a creative side and an intuitive side, and all that other stuff too. But I do believe in order to really understand it and respect it, you have to go back to the beginning. So
I tend to agree with that one. All right. Thanks, Linda. What about you, Barbie? I'll hand over to you. I'm just conscious, obviously I'm conscious of keeping the time and room for questions at the end. So, all right.
Okay.
Tell us about you, Barbie.
Well, I want to thank you first for having me here, and I'd like to share my journey as an alumni graduate. My path started really unconventional. It started astrology began through holistic. Well, was studying nutrition, aromatherapy, iridology, astrology at American College of Healthcare Science in Portland, Oregon. And that's where I earned a degree in applied science. And from there, I began observing patterns, studying the eyes and body. And I was scrolling on the internet, and I came across medical astrology, and that brought me to connect the eyes with the body and timing of the cycles. And so I ran into Henry Seltzer online. I bought his Time Passengers software. And then I asked him about medical astrology. And if anyone knows Henry Seltzer, he's more of a modern astrologer. And so from there, he sent me to IIA. He said, if you really want to learn something about medical astrology, to go to IIA. And so from there, that's where I began my formal training at International Academy of Astrology in 2018. And I started that 4-year program. And as Linda was mentioning, yes, it takes you all the way from the ancient times and all the way through. And it's long, and it's and Levita's here. She's up there. I struggled through that class, and Levita would understand that one, but I got through. So alongside my work at IAA and the study with medical astrology, I was doing Judith Hill. We all know who Judith Hill is. She's a medical astrologer. So I completed 2 years with her, along with Matthew Woods, who's an herbalist, and Judith Hill. They had a class together. So I had some hands-on with that and my iridology and my spirology that I do. So it wasn't just studying the theory. I was actually now trying to apply it, what I've learned, and like Linda, you got halfway through and you was able to stop applying it. She just, and as far as with Susan Gidel, it's the same thing. Life kind of, I gotta jump on this boat and use it. So the same kind of here. I did the same. So over the years with astrology, what naturally shifted from something I was studying, how I was able to put this more into focus. It was when I graduated in 2023, and that was when it became a core part of my work, right, where I started really understanding this, and organically, I put it into a vocation, right, and so I was building my astrology into a profession, and it also happened to be a natural thing I was doing. So I already was working with clients, right? So holistic practitioner, and then astrology just became an extension of that work. And so I began integrating it in sessions, and over time it became a more central part of what I was offering. But then about 6 months after graduating, I got an email from Ina, and I was invited to IAA to instruct the program. So now I had already kind of been like what Susan Gidel was like, I got to get into this. And I was already starting my astrology with my iridology. And then I had this offer to do this teaching, mentoring with Edith Newberg, and then again with Gregory Clare. And I said, well, geez, I think I'll jump on that boat. Why not? What can it hurt? And so I did. And so over time, this grew into a more sustainable path for me. Right. So I was able to go back even more to the basics. I teach the basics in the natal and the nat too. And so that just really helps me further my iridology and looking with the eyes and looking at the chart. So astrology connects more very directly with their original work in the holistic health. So how does that do that? Iridology shows the inherited patterns with pre-predictions of the authority, right? So what's happening? So the iris, when I look at the iris, I'm looking at the patterns and pre-predictions. When I'm looking at the sclera, that sclerology we look at, that shows what's actively happening in real time. So as an astrologer, we look at the timing and the cycles and energetic patterns, right? So I was able to put this all together, looking at a chart and looking at someone's eyes. So instead of just looking at these systems separately, I was able to bring the whole thing together to see a full picture. And so what was happening was being, I could see what was happening and what was being, and I can see what's being activated at the same time. And the cycles, what's happening in the transits and then their chart and the transits and looking at their eyes and looking at the square, it gives me better work and clear direction and to help my client. So by combining the iridology, the sclerology, and the astrology, I developed a way of working and connecting and observing time. And it's a timing thing, right? Just like we're all saying, well, the void of course, we're going to, look at this, we look at cycles. And so what's happening, retrogrades, all that kind of stuff. So today with astrology, how it supports me, I work, I'm known for helping others, like Linda. She had got into this place where she needed help herself, and helping herself was able to help others. And I had a similar path back in, I think it was in 2009, 2010. I went through some, medical issues, but I went into the holistic field and trying to find a nutritional path to fix it. And then I came into the medical. So there is that path where you're trying to help yourself, and doing that, you end up helping others. And that's how astrology, comes together. So, like I said, like today, I support the work. I know by helping people understand their patterns on a deeper level, it brings clarity to what they're experiencing, whether that's their own health or the cycles that personal direction. So it helps them understand just what is happening, what is happening, and when it's going to shift, how it's going to shift. Like Linda, she was, same thing. She was talking about shifts. She can help people and let them know when the shifts are going to happen. So personally, astrology has completely changed what I see in life. Yeah. If it wasn't for Henry Seltzer telling me to call over to IAA and check that out. And I'm a Capricorn, and I'm structured. I stayed on the 4-year. I went 5 years. I extended and took some electives. And from there, I was, Ina called me and I got on that boat, like I said. And so if somebody feels drawn to astrology, my advice is to follow that curiosity. Right? Follow it, because when you apply it in real life, it can become something meaningful. And I help people understand that their body and their life are already showing them, so they can work with those patterns instead of against those patterns.
Barbie, that's great, and I see that with you. You did forget to mention that you're also teaching Nat 6, which is astronomy in other bodies. So Barbie,
yeah.
Barbie covers quite a bit, and I've got to say, and this is just for those watching, anybody who, one of the things I'm really, when I took over the IAA AstroCollege, in some respects, it was sort of like one of those typical, at the time, I think I had Uranus transiting conjunct my moon. So it wasn't like it was one of those things that was like, well, you're going to have a choice. You have to do it now. And so I did it now without a hell of a lot of insight and ability to know where it's going to go. But the most important thing that I would say this, and I discuss it with my partner, Lydia, as well. I go, the best thing that ever happened to me was I inherited people like you. I inherited the teachers. I inherited the staff that were there. I inherited the people that were involved in the college. Diane, I know you've joined us, and Levita's up there as well. People like yourselves. There's this team of people that really care. And one of the things that I've known with Barbie is she goes way over and above and beyond to help students understand if they've got, because Barbie, you said, you said, oh, it was really tough for me doing Levita's class, but that's because isn't it? I mean, I'm sure, aren't you slightly dyslexic or something along those? Yeah.
No, I know. I'm just like.
So when she's doing Levita's class on grammar, It's like fun and games. Like Barbie will say in her classes, oh, and something about Venus, and then you hear the student go, but weren't we talking about Mercury? Oh, I meant Mercury. So she could confuse people, but when I say that, she doesn't, because her actual enthusiasm and love of teaching just shines right through, and that's one of the things that I've found the most rewarding from where I sit, is that the other thing about becoming an astrologer, I think everyone sort of hasn't mentioned yet, is there's this big community of people that help each other, right? That when it really comes down to it, like I mean, Linda, you and I have only just met today. We've communicated for 2 years back and forwards on email here and there, but I haven't actually physically met you. Susan was not far off the same thing, but I met with you more recently. Alex, I have a number of times, and Barbie, I see, I think we communicate every second day, but that's a different story. At the end of the day, though, when it comes down to it, everybody has the same interests at heart, and we all have this big belief and knowledge. It's not even a belief; it's a knowledge. It's a proven experience that this particular subject and what it can provide to people is invaluable. Like, it really does change your life. And I love what you said, Barbie, about, I'd encourage people to at least, if the curiosity is there, go after it, try it. I mean, what we've just described, Linda, you had a really horrible experience in the process, but born out of it is this amazing ability to help people that gives you a really strong sense of purpose, from what I can see.
Thank you. And, I want to add this, because we're talking about some of our transits and stuff. I had Saturn conjunct my South Node in Pisces in my 8th house at the time of that accident. So it was like I was reliving my life, and to become a healer.
Yeah,
and
wow.
The only way you can be a healer is to be wounded. So you have to be able to learn how to heal your own wounds, in order to help heal someone else. So that was a big part. But I want to add onto what you were just saying too, and I know you want to finish up with Barbie and get on to Alex. But one thing that I found, because you're talking about community and all of us having this common bond, if you will, one of the things that really helped me go through IAA and the classes and how hard they were, and it was a lot of work and a lot of studying and a lot of reading and a lot of whatever, was I had a study buddy. I had a friend. I had someone who motivated me to get through my classes. We went through every single class together for 3.5 years. And we talked and we got to know each other, and we didn't compare things like for homework and stuff. But we motivated each other to get through that, and we're still friends today.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because we have that commonality, we have that common bond even more so, and it gives you it makes you not want to quit if you have that study buddy.
Yeah, I see that naturally coming together with people. At the moment, we've got a Nat 4 class with about 5 people in it, and they've all sort of landed there together. And I was speaking to Janet Carroll, and she said, oh, no. And we have somebody also based in Scotland on a different time zone. And she's technically supposed to be joining that class as well. So there'll be like 6 of them. And so what's happened is, because from a time zone point of view, Janet's gone, no, don't worry about it. I'll teach the lady in Scotland in the morning on her time zone, her evening, and I'll teach her on her own. And then I'm going to teach the others all together, because I can't break up that group.
Right.
Because they all like to study together, and they will go through. So when I send an email out, here, guys, this is what we're going to do. Where's the thing? I think about 3 of them just signed up for their next course for April. Immediately, bang. So it's you get that, what you just described, you get that camaraderie, and you get that they learn together, they bounce off each other. I'm a firm believer. I mean, I know, and I'm going to just go on a tangent for a second. When I at the moment, I'm setting up these astrology education programs. I call them like that. had to come up with a title. And we're slowly building the self-paced online version of the same NAT program and all the way through. It will be a little bit different because technically speaking, the idea of it is you can do those, you can come along and do them in your own pace, and you're going to get the same curriculum as you would as a professional. This is really important. But I will guarantee you that when you go through it all, you'll get halfway through it if you're really serious about it, and you'll go, maybe I need someone to teach me this. So we're going to be having sort of, other components where, once a month, someone will jump in there and do some Q&As for people who are doing those courses. But at the end of the day, we're not, when they do it that way, they're not going to get you'll get a certificate of completion, but you won't get an achievement award until you've passed an actual exam. So we're basically putting it in different levels. And the idea of that is, I've called that the personal astrology program. Because realistically, not everyone wants to be qualified as a professional. They don't want to have to do the 3.5 years of hard study and exams and deadlines. Okay, so they don't want to do it. But they still want the knowledge. So I'm trying to break it out. And so that's what we're going to develop. So that for the average person, they can at least say, look, I've done the courses, I've done the lessons, but I'm not a professional, but or by standard or by qualification, but at least I've got the knowledge, and I can take that away and I can use it in my personal life. I could use that information, Susan, and then take it on to how I become a financial astrologer, and I could still use that in my personal life and understand it better. So there's all different sorts of areas that people will be able to move towards. And that's part and parcel of what we're trying to do. But the community is really important. So that's where that's at. Now, Barbie, anything else you wanted to say? You're on mute again. Is there anything else you wanted to finish up with before I give the floor to Alex?
No, I think that's great. I'm all good.
All right.
Just one thing. I got one thing I can say. My dyslexia really is more worse than Mercury retrograde.
How did you go with Mercury retrograde and Pisces? That would have been fun. We're only just coming out of it.
Ask my students.
Well,
no, I tried to get more rest, and I watch my diet.
Yeah.
You have to do certain things elsewise. But yeah, it can really fudge me up some.
Well, we're still coming out of that shadow period. It hasn't even finished yet.
I know that. April 9th, I know.
So fun and games. So Alex, thank you for coming along as it is late over there for you. It must be like 2:00 in the morning just about or something, is it? Or
Yeah, it's 2:00. And I am I'm a early to bed, early to rise kind of person. So I'm struggling a bit. I get a little silly when I get tired. So if I giggle inappropriately, I'm sorry.
Can we say what's new?
A little bit tired.
So Alex Trenoweth, let's hear about your story and how you came into astrology and what you're doing with it.
My mom was reading the Sunday papers, I guess, and there was a special about astrology and sun signs. And I was a young teenager. I was probably 10 or 11, maybe 12. And I'm a Cancer. And she was saying, oh, Cancers. Oh, here's what it says, home loving and shy. And I was like, really? And then she read she's a Sagittarius. Of course, she's energetic and outgoing. And I was like, wow, I guess astrology is a little rubbish then, because that's all I thought it was of what you read in the papers. And so my birthday's the 20th of July. So somebody asked me what my star sign was or what my sign was. I'd always be really quick to say on the cusp of Leo, because I could never identify with being a Cancer. So many years later, I was at university, probably my last year of university. I was kind of thinking about coming to England already. And a work colleague, asked me, what my sun sign was. And I said, she said, oh, you must be a Leo, is what she said to me. And I, just to be arsey, I said, no, I'm a Cancer. And then she said something that changed my life. She said, you must have the moon in Leo, which I'd never heard before. I only thought, it was a sun, where your sun was. And it was amazing. And she got opened up an ephemeris, constructed my chart, which to me looked like some sort of magical incantation.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, so if I've done the calculations right, you have the moon in Leo, you're a Gemini rising, and you would also have your ruling planet in Leo, which is Mercury. And I just thought, wow, no wonder, I feel like a Leo. And then shortly later, I moved to England. I went to Dublin as well. I got married in Dublin, started my family, and I found myself studying with the Faculty of Astrological Studies because I'm living in England. And, just went on from there. I got a book from the library by Nick Campion, who became very important in my astrological studies. He became my tutor for the MA in cultural astronomy and astrology. And back then, we actually traveled by train from London to Bath Spa to go to classes. So I really struggled because I was a single parent, and I had 3 young children. And just to make my life more complicated, I decided I wanted to be a teacher. Actually, I knew I always wanted to be a teacher. It's just that getting rid of, can I say, a 12-stone burden kind of released me, freed me up to have more time and energy to devote to what I wanted to do, which was be a teacher. So I was studying astrology and studying to be a teacher at the same time, and trying to raise 3 children on my own. But training to be a teacher is not an easy thing. Neither is becoming an astrologer. And I didn't make things easy for myself either. But I started my student teaching, and I thought to myself, this is the only reason why I got into this, I told myself, was to pay for astrology classes. And it was just too difficult. I had too much going on, and I wanted to give up teaching. And I remember what I was teaching. I was teaching Macbeth, bottom set, year 10s. And I turned around and looked at them, and I thought to myself, wow, it's really going to be a shame to leave teaching. I'll never be in this situation again. I really enjoyed teaching, but there's just so much red tape to go through. And I just thought, wow, it's really a shame that I'm going to walk away from all this. And then I realized, hold on, you guys, for the most part, all have the same Jupiter sign, and you all have the same Saturn sign, and your Jupiter signs and your Saturn signs are playing off of mine. And that's when I had it. And I knew that with that little bit of information about Jupiter, if Jupiter is a planet of expansion, of higher education, of learning, of putting little ideas, the Mercury ideas together to form bigger ideas, that was Jupiter. And I thought, I got it now. Now I understand. And I went from being a struggling teacher to being a teacher that was very confident, very sure, understood my students very easily. I still struggle with other things in teaching. I got Saturn in Pisces. I was one of those teachers that I could turn my back for 2 seconds and the classroom would be in chaos. So I had a lot to learn, but I found my niche very, very quickly in the astrology world. And I knew that if I just focused on that, I have Jupiter in Cancer in the 2nd house. In fact, I have a stellium in Cancer. So I knew that if I worked with children and families and I kept working on it, that was going to be what I'd be good at. And that's what I focused on. And so, 20 years later, that is, what I do. I train astrologers how to work safely. I teach child protection, safeguarding and child protection for astrologers who do want to work with children's chart. By the way, never work one-to-one with children. Always have the parents with you. Otherwise, it goes against safeguarding and child protection. Being a parent does not give you automatic experience enough to work with children's charts. You need to have additional training, which I believe passionately is important. I left full-time teaching because I wrote my first book, Growing Pains, and I was starting to travel a lot. And teachers, they never let them off. We're so valuable that we can't possibly have a day off in the middle of term, but they pay us I won't say too much about what they pay us. I had to leave full-time teaching, and I just started doing agency work to free me up so I could travel. And I went to the States. I did a cross-country tour of the States. And then on my last day of the tour in 2014, I got an invitation to go to India. And in India, India was an incredible experience because they don't do things by halves over there. It's the cameras, the lights, the recording equipment. I mean, they do things full on TV studio in their conferences. And I remember sitting on the dais on the stage, being like, "Oh my God, I can't believe all the cameras are going to be on me." But I was like, "Oh, Moon and Leo, I can handle this." And I told myself, like Janis Joplin, just before Monterey, she says, "Just do it like you're never going to get another chance." So I went on the stage and I owned the stage and talked about astrology and education. And I ended up winning an award. Who knows? International Astrologer of the Year 2015. And that really was the start of my real international traveling. From there, really kind of everybody got to know about what had happened in India. I ended up going to Cape Town, South Africa, later that same year. I stayed in Cape Town for a couple months and went back to India. I was made Secretary General of the conference, which basically means I invited a lot of astrology friends over for the big conference in 2018, which was probably better known for certain controversial views on the sidereal zodiac. But you can't buy this kind of publicity. Anyway, so later on there was UAC, and I did an Australian tour somewhere in there. And then we were supposed to do the big conference in 2020. And the organizer, the man who was funding it, says, I got all these problems. My mother-in-law has liver cancer, so I'm not going to be able to do this. So we had to shut down the conference for 2020, which is just as well, because then the pandemic hit, right?
Yep.
I mean, I just think, thank God people didn't start getting their visas in order and stuff like that. We called it off just in time. So then we're all locked down, but I focused on my writing. I've always wanted to be a writer and author. So I did my second book under lockdown. That's on astrology and films, just because what else is there to do during lockdown but watch films and write? Then I did my third book, Zeus on the Loose, which came out last year. And it had a launch at Waterstones, which is England's main retailer of books. So mainstream bookseller. I did an author's talk in central London, which is pretty amazing. And then today, after years and years of working on my Saturn book, I sent it off to my publisher today. So that's my journey. But I if I had to give advice to an astrologer, I think Susan touched on it too. She knew her niche pretty much early days, and I did too. I felt called, and I knew I was on the right path because I looked at my chart and I knew that's what I was going to be good at, and so I stuck with it, honed and practiced in the way that Saturn makes us slow down and dig deep. And can I go to bed now?
Well, Alex, you can if you like, unless anyone's got some questions for you. But look, that's an amazing journey. What I've got to ask a quick question: where's your Saturn? What house is it in?
10th.
In the 10th house. Well, there you go.
And it's the only planet above the horizon. Everything else is below.
Okay, so therefore you're pushed out into the public eye. But as you get older in life, even more so, as you get more experience. So. Just think of what's going to happen now after this second Saturn return you've just been going through.
I'm through the Saturn return.
Yeah.
I'm finished. I'm just finished off a little bit of my fifth Jupiter return. But I think we talked about this before we turned the recording on. I've never been so busy. I've never worked so hard. And, I think coming through my second Saturn return, I'm less afraid of, I'm just like, for people who get in my way, I have no tolerance. Just get out of my way. Because I got something that I'm focusing on, and I won't put up with it. I'm a lot, I wouldn't say, it's just like I don't have time for nonsense. I just know what I want to do, and just,
What degree is your Gemini rising?
6:43.
Well, someone's got Uranus coming up to hit.
I know.
You think you're going to push people out of the way now? Wait till that hits. See, funny thing is, as astrologers, What's that?
With your solar return, you got Algol, Uranus on Algol, don't you?
Well, my moon is natally on Algol, so it's great. It's fun. Yeah.
Your moon's on Algol.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Mm.
Wow.
So there's
You
there's a bit of interesting stuff goes on there. So yeah, natally my moon is right on Algol, and it opposes Neptune, but it's part of a mystic rectangle. So it's sort of the interesting thing is not what I think's happened in my case anyway is you said I've gone through my Saturn return before you. So technically, although we've discussed this prior, that Alex is a little bit older than me, born in the same
Careful.
year. But technically, I'm sort of, I've sort of had to peak in age a bit before her because my Saturn's at an earlier degree. So I've been through my second Saturn return. But my Jupiter is actually in Leo, okay, at early degrees, and it's retrograde. So by progression, it's retrograded back to exactly sextiling my moon at the moment in Taurus, and it's in Cancer. So the progressed Jupiter, this is for those who understand it, is at 25 of Cancer at the moment, and it's sextiling my moon at 25. Now, the interesting thing about that is that my natally, although they don't look like they're an aspect with each other longitudinally, they're nearly exact by parallel. So they are by declination very closely exact. So that moon, the only thing that protects me a little bit from that Algol is the Jupiter conjunction or the Jupiter, basically the aspect to the moon. I think that helps a lot as Jupiter being my ruling planet. Now, just for those who don't understand why everyone's having a big Algol. Algol's technically, especially with the fixed stars, is considered the most evil star of all. Now, one of the things that it often is associated to is strangulation in people. So that the events in life have been associated to strangulation. I don't know if anyone knows that. But one thing that I'm just letting you know how that played out in my life. Not that I got strangled, but I didn't. But what happened was that my mother, while she was pregnant with me, so think about the moon being the mother, while she was pregnant with me, her sister was murdered by strangulation. So what that did was it stressed her obviously terribly. And at about 6 months pregnant, she threatened to miscarry. Okay. And what happened, and I know this now, but I was sort of everything settled down, and then I was born in the December. But at about 17 months old, I sat up in the high chair, and I still remember this. And I sat there, and I used to do strange things as a kid, like I'd hold my breath before I ate. I didn't know why. I'd go sort of blue and green and all that sort of stuff, and then now I can eat. And then they used, I was born with a complete fear of water. They couldn't even put me in a bath. So at 17 months old, sitting in the high chair at the lunchtime dinner table, because I can still remember it. I remember a lot of things going way back, which is obviously the moon. I sat there and told my mother off. And we were sitting there, and we had two people from across the road, and which was one was a school teacher and the other one was a nurse, John and Carol, and they were sitting there having lunch with us. And I looked at my mum and I said, "It's all your fault." And don't forget, I was 17 months old. So I didn't really, and my verbal skills at that point were, I used to talk, Mercury in the first house in a T-square. So I used to talk fairly young, but I sat there and said, I wanted to be born in September, not December. Now, how would I know that at 17 months old? And I said, you wouldn't let me out. I was drowning. And I don't know what the cubes were, but I remember saying to my mum, there was all these cubes and they were holding me in. And I was drowning, and I wanted to get out, and you wouldn't let me out. And I can't remember the rest of the conversation, but I went on for about 10 minutes. My dad ran and got a bit of paper and wrote it all down at the time, because he thought, what the hell's going out of this kid's mouth? And then I went back and had my lunch, and I was fine after that. But it explained, because don't forget, my moon is in opposition to Neptune. My moon sits in the 6th house, intercepted in Taurus, and Neptune's in Scorpio. So it really had an effect on my, I was also born with colic. So I had 3 months colic when I was born. So I had pains in my belly and stomach. So there was a lot of stuff when we talk about things like Linda, and I'm also a celiac. And that came about at about 18 months old, way before it sort of became sort of trendy like it is now in some respects. But, or not, I shouldn't say trendy, affecting people as it is now. But, so I had those sorts of things. But what I've found in my life, that moon, Neptune opposition, caused me lots of grief with women that were the closest to me. And so what I did, and this is another point of astrology, I moved from the east coast of Australia to on the Adelaide time zone. And when I did that, my relocation chart moved that moon of mine from the 12th house up into the 7th and Neptune into the 1st and gave me a Scorpio rising, thus the black t-shirt. So I have a bit of a chuckle about that. But the point is, as soon as that moon moved out of the 6th house into the 7th, my issues with women closest to me dissolved. It was out into the light. It could be seen. It could be dealt with. And that algol effect stopped. So it's very interesting to see it all working in practice. But talking about algol, people say, well, how did that affect you? And when I say that Jupiter protected me, well, maybe I might have died in the womb. But instead, I was born. And that's sort of part of, I mean, that's a fairly general assessment, but I'm just giving people a bit of background of when someone says, how did that work for you? I go, well, my mum's only sister was murdered while she was pregnant with me. Yeah, not great. So that's the sort of thing that can be seen and understood. But, we all look at those sorts of things. And my moon is also not that close, but it's near my north node as well. So there's a little bit of astrological history on that one. And
Algol follows me everywhere.
Does it?
It was the eclipse closest to the time I was born. So the eclipse, my prenatal eclipse, was on Algol. But it follows me everywhere. I mean, I could just be randomly looking at transits and the moon on Algol or something. And I've done quite an extensive work on Algol and the British royal family as well. You can read my stuff on
I think I started reading that and I put it down because I was busy.
You can't say that to someone with Mercury in the
Sorry, Alex. All right. Okay. I know Alex is getting tired. Has anyone got any questions for this particular panel? And is anything else, like Susan, is there anything else you'd like to sort of add? Anyone want to add anything because you started off, there might have been a few other things that came up that you hadn't considered or wanted to just jump in and say?
No, I think I'm pretty good.
Okay.
I would just say that, like me, don't wait for the epiphany that to be an astrologer or to use astrology in your work or daily life to think that it has to be one or the other. It's an adjunct. It enhances whatever it is that you do and can be incorporated even if you don't want to become the professional get paid for it kind of astrologer. It's valuable information that can be applied to whatever it is that you do in life.
Exactly. Even down to sending out emails at the right time. Oh, that's one thing I was going to say. I'm going to change the header on the website, and there's a line I'm going to put on there. I've decided this is what it is, and it's going to say, everyone believes in astrology when they something along the. I'm just going to get the right. Everyone believes in astrology when they need to make a decision they can't afford to get wrong.
There you go.
And that's pretty much how I think it works for. And everyone here in this room would probably go, "Yep, I agree." And that's pretty much how it works. All right. Anyone? Any last little words for anyone before we sort of sign off and say thank you to everyone for coming along?
Yeah, Lucas, John Heffernan.
Hi, John.
Yeah, I have a question for Susan. So, Susan, you 50 years in financial services, and you and I probably know a lot of the same people. We sold level for major institutional. Some of my experience on a trading floor, I believe this is universally true in all markets. Volume dictates everything. And so have you found had any success in trying to identify the particular times of a day where volume is likely to increase?
I have not astrologically, and but in terms of the charts that I watch, I'm always looking at the front month futures contract with the biggest volume. But
Yep.
I don't even know if it's still in use anymore. But what was it? What was the name of that thing that somebody at the Board of Trade created that would track volume?
For a while by Peach
Yes,
Market.
yeah, market profile.
Yeah.
Right. That seems to me to be a good thing, but I've never looked at it astrologically. No.
Well, okay. All right. I just wondered. That's all.
All right. Thanks,
Yeah,
John.
thank you.
Robert, you got anything you want to ask? Or was he just...
Just enjoyed listening to everybody, how they got involved in astrology, and it was just, everybody has a great story, and another time I'll tell you my story. But
Yeah.
I did a lot of trading, and also I worked for a private businessman as his personal astrologer for 2 years. And first I got involved in astrology more on the psychological side because I was a psych major in college, and I just felt it was very good at picking personalities and traits and characteristics, strengths and weaknesses. But then I didn't realize that it could be applied in day-to-day life and business. And I got involved in studying a branch of astrology called Uranian. It was developed by this German astrologer in the early 1900s, Alfred Witte. And it takes a lot of situations with midpoints and planetary pictures, but also it looks at astrology in a different way, and it's a great tool for timing. And this businessman only wanted a Uranian astrologer, and basically what I did was just write reports for him day to day, hour to hour, whatever the trends were, and just gave him here's your schedule for the week. I did monthly schedules, and it really worked. And the voided course moon, Susan, is right on.
Yes, exactly.
But there's things like that, and it's a very valuable tool, and I think it's funny. Listen, Alex, she's a teacher, and my wife is a teacher, and one day she came at the start of the school year. She had the list of all the students with their birth dates. So I just took all the birth dates and I just looked at and I just used the elements, what kind of elements were in the class, whether it was a strong water sign or fire or earth or air, and actually the class kind of like for that year resonated whoever the strongest element was. If there was like more water kids in the class, I mean, everybody was like very, emotionally restless. It was more fire. She would be having a couple cocktails when she came home at night because kids were like very, a lot of energy if you have a lot of fire signs in the class. So I could see little
So does
things
she
like
teach
that.
primary school or secondary school? Elementary
She
or
was, te-
high
she
school?
was teaching, at that time, she was teaching, I think, first grade and second grade.
Oh, okay. So can I tell you something? Why that doesn't work for secondary school teachers is because it's too much data. So an elementary school teacher only has 30 children that
Right.
you get to know over the course of the year. So it works that you can use their birth data. But when you get to secondary school, I had 280 students over a 2-week rolling rota. So that's too much information for one person to handle. That's why I go for the Jupiter and Saturn. Also, I did try to organize my classes according to elements. I had the fire signs in one row, the earth signs in the next, the air signs in the next, and the water signs in the final. And what happened to me was the air signs and the fire signs shouted over the heads of the earth signs, who sat there in silent shock, and the water signs started to hug themselves and to rock themselves to.
Poor
So
things.
it might work in primary school, but it doesn't work in secondary school. So I just wanted to stick that story in.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me
No, that's
the chance
okay.
to relive
No,
that
it's
particular nightmare.
it has a little, it just gave her a little hint about how the class would proceed for the year, and it kind of it played out that way.
Yeah, awesome.
I'll add that I ran a marketing department for a brokerage firm, and I think at one point I had like 15 people reporting to me, and one time my boss said, "Gosh, your team gets so much done." And I looked at it. So I was talking to my astrologer about it. This is before I took any classes or anything, and Barbara said, "Well, do you know all our birthdays?" And I said, "Sure." So we looked at them, and what it turned out is that out of the 15, I think 10 of us were Earth signs.
Yeah.
So we just got stuff done.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you're talking about that. We've got 3 Capricorns in this one, and if you think about it, we're all cardinal signs. The whole all of this panel are cardinal signs.
Yeah.
Linda's a Libran, Alex is a Cancer, and the funny thing is, Alex, you're Cancer Gemini, and both Susan and I are Capricorn Sag, so we're like literally opposites. Not mentioning moon signs. Barbie, what's your rising? Aquarius, isn't it?
It's first.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then so you're Cap Aquarius, and Linda, I think you're Libra and Leo. So
And then I have a moon and Earth moon.
an Earth moon in Virgo. So we're talking about, but the funny thing is here talking about elements coming together. Well, there's not so much an element, but the fact we're all cardinal means we're all action orientated in some form or another, and taking charge of what we're going to do and go, you know what? And I think that's an important thing. So talking about the other thing I was just going to briefly touch on, when Robert mentioned void of course, just for those who watch this later that don't necessarily know a lot of astrology, a void of course moon is very simply, it's about to change sign, or it passes its last aspect to any planet, and it's not going to make another aspect to any planet by degree before it changes into the next sign. And there's a small period when that happens. When we started this podcast, we were talking about the fact that the moon I literally timed it so I go, no, we're not going to start till this time, because the moon will have moved from 29 degrees of Scorpio and it's gone into 0 degrees Sag before we started. So that's avoiding the void of course moon is what we're sort of saying. So just so that for those who know. But I think, Alex, I reckon it's way past your bedtime. And we're going to have, I haven't even set it up yet. I'm going to do it later today. But Alex is going to come and join us for why I became an astrologer, and with a bit of focus on working with children and also running through her books. I think we're going to do that in Australian time, it's the 9th. So it's only a few days away. So I've got to get that up online so people know about it, so they can also register for that one.
Susan, I have a question for Susan.
Yeah.
Susan, did you do like day trading, or was it like long-term investments?
Actually, I don't trade a lot myself. I thought I would once I had the time to do it, and was not restricted from doing so. When I worked in the financial services business, wherever I worked, I was prohibited from trading.
Okay.
And so I didn't kind of get my blood into it. And now that I am able to, I find that I'm really not interested. But I lean toward long term, and I had always thought that when I had the time, that my ideal approach would be to look at the charts at 4:00 in the afternoon, make any changes, and not look at them again until the next day at 4:00.
Okay. So I know John was on and he was asking that question about volume, and because I used to do a trading with options, a day trade, and you can see, what the moon does have a certain, the moon and Mercury and Mars definitely has some sort of effect with trade, volume, whether it's sell or buy times and things like that. You can see a different adjustment in trades.
I've never looked at it that granularly.
Okay.
But for sure, when I look at transits to first trade charts to get an idea of highs and lows coming up, and it's often the moon that is the final
Decision maker.
trip. Yeah.
Well, we find that too.
And I've seen it in I have looked every once in a while when I was trying to make a point in some presentation or something, and you can see when the moon can kick in on a 1 minute, 15-minute bar chart kind of thing. I just never have paid attention to it because I'm not really interested in that short term of price movement.
Mm.
Do you have the chart of the New York Stock Exchange?
Well, the one I use is at noon, but I don't look at it because to me that's an incorporation chart, and so I don't watch it for any kind of potential market movement.
Fair enough. Well,
Do you watch it?
When I was doing it, yes, a good friend of mine who was a very good Uranian astrologer in New York, Wayne Boer, we used to work on the chart. Excuse me. And we came up to, actually the chart represents, the stock market represents a psychotic killer. That's what it does.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see how it works and how it affects people's lives and changes, and so it does have an entity, is what I'm trying to say.
No, I don't disagree that
Yeah.
it is an entity.
Yes.
I just don't watch it for price movement.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Has anyone got anything else they want to add? Because otherwise, I'm going to say happy Easter to all my lovely US-based correspondents. And Alex, you're already in Monday morning, but it's so early that you probably won't wake up till a little bit later. Promise I won't do this one to you again. Well, actually, you volunteered, so that's okay.
No,
Yeah.
I did. It's spring break for me.
Yeah.
I can stay up a little bit later when I don't have to work on Monday morning. So.
All right. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to stop the
Thank you.
recording.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Nice to meet
Thank you, Lou.
everybody.
All right. Not a problem.
Recording
Good night.
stopped.
All right.